Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here at the Red Hat 2016 Government Symposium, and joining us here is Sean Walsh. Sean is the Emerging Technology Team Lead for Emergent. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me, Wyatt.
Terrific. So we're talking about all things open source, and one of my first questions for you is, as you've been monitoring the federal government space, tell us how you feel open source has evolved in this administration, and maybe where you see it going in the next couple of years.
Sure. Well, I mean, we've had a lot of great discussions today about how open source technology is being adopted across the federal government. I think the Obama administration has done a pretty good job pushing open source as a message. Their open government program has evolved since about 2011 timeframe. We've seen, I think, 2 successive iterations of that program rolled out so far, and it's driving federal agencies to adopt open source software. So, I mean, I think that's a really strong messaging coming from the executive branch, and I'd like to see it continue forward. I hope that the next administration, whichever way things go, they don't put the brakes on this, because I think open source adoption is going to drive innovation across the federal space, and I think we're seeing it today. So,
would you think there's enough sort of critical momentum to keep it going fairly straightforward?
Yeah, I mean, so we're a partner for Red Hat, and we see open source conversations happening everywhere. People are looking for different solutions, are looking to engage with the industry, and I think it's snowballing at this point. I don't think you could stop it if you tried, but continuing to have that executive level endorsement for open source, I think, is going to really perpetuate the adoption across the industry.
That makes sense. Let's talk about cybersecurity. There's kind of a contradiction of myths in some ways, that because it's open source, it's more challenging to make it secure, and yet we know with so many eyes on the software development community, security actually should be stronger. What's your take on it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think you really hit it right on the head there. So I think understanding how open source is more secure really comes to understanding the difference between traditional proprietary software and open source. So, with a traditional solution, you've got a small team of developers, usually working under tight deadlines, getting top-down direction, kind of authoritarian style direction. And, what do you end up with? You end up with the best product of a small group, which sometimes can be great, but it leaves a lot to be desired sometimes. So, inherent in any small group project working quickly, you're going to have, maybe some coding errors, you're going to have some lazy editing, and you're going to have 1, 2, maybe a small group's vision for what the best end state is. Compare that to open source software, which, like you said, by nature is open. We're opening the code up so that our customers and our end users and potentially threat vectors can see what we're doing, but it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts to vulnerabilities. So with all those eyes working on a project, you're closing up holes, and the community embraces that model. They want to contribute. So you've got folks who do great feature additions. You've got people who just edit. Much like Wikipedia is self-editing,
right. Open
source code is very self-editing. You have people who want to get rid of bad code. They want to replace it with good code, maybe more modern methodologies. And they're just going to close up loopholes. A lot of proprietary vulnerabilities come with leftover code that just gets commented out. Open source really prevents that. So I think that we're going to see, Red Hat is a shining example of it, how open source software can be more secure than proprietary counterparts.
Appreciate that. Let's talk about IT modernization. Certainly it's one of the key discussion points from U.S. CIO Tony Scott, the aging infrastructure, et cetera. How do you see open source being able to contribute to IT modernization or support it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that the U.S. Digital Services kind of already addressed how they see traditional federal infrastructure being a laggard. So they've talked about federal programs sometimes fail to launch, they go over budget, they go over their times, and they lag behind industry. So, with an IT modernization effort coming through from a congressional level, I think you're going to see open source benefit greatly, because you have, the key benefits of open source are low cost, rapid innovation, and cutting edge technology, and security. We already talked about that. So, we have a budget that's currently measured in like the tens of trillions of dollars. I mean, that's astounding budget levels. We need to address that. If we're getting more cost-effective solutions by using open source software, I think that's that's great for every citizen. We want to see budgets shrink. Ideally, those are our tax dollars at work. So let's use them more effectively. From a security standpoint, it's my personal identifying information. It's yours. It's possibly, sensitive data streams for our men and women in uniform. Secure software means that everybody's information is more secure. And if open source is the road to security, that should be on any CIO's checklist. So I think in a lot of ways open source plays right into what are the natural tendencies for an IT modernization effort: lower cost, commoditization, security. It checks all the boxes.
And lastly, let's talk about more broadly about the opportunities and role of open source in areas like collaboration, mobility, the cloud. How do you see open source facilitating in those areas?
Sure. Well, open source in most commercial cloud sectors as well as in federal cloud deployments, you're seeing Linux used as like the primary operating system. OpenStack is the backbone of many cloud infrastructures. And so you're seeing open source projects that are now ahead of proprietary alternatives. Proprietary service vendors are kind of left holding the bag. They've invested a lot in building out these technologies, and they're quickly falling behind where the community's at. So I think, going forward, you're going to see open source concepts spread around. A personal area I'd love to see outside of the realm of IT would be kind of an open source education initiative. It's built into some of the Obama administration's open government planning. Let's build out open curriculum. And I think if we see something like that, we're going to see rapid development in the quality of education and the accessibility of it. So I think open source is going to start impacting us in ways we've never seen it before, and it's going to spread, outside of IT and into every aspect of our life.
Well, I appreciate you putting that in perspective for us.
Yeah.
Well, Sean Walsh, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing some of your insights with us.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm Wyatt Cash. Look for more of our coverage on fedscoop.com. Thanks for being with us.